Oh, here I am. Oh, no, I'm not there.
Hi, Nevada. Just so you know, the it's not like a waiting room and everything. So as soon as people join, they're automatically in. We have one so far that's hanging out, waiting for us to get started. Um, but it's not a waiting room, so you know.
All right. So do I share my screen to get the box us in with depression and anxiety, or they can expand our reality with hope and confidence to achieve our greatest desired outcomes? Let's see here. We go. All right. So um, beliefs do have the power to make impossibilities come true and also make the possible become impossible. So, what are some of the common beliefs that you're aware of, like positive beliefs or limiting beliefs? And you can just put those in the chat, and then Brandy, in a moment, I'll let you kind of see what people have shared. But some of the things, just examples for how beliefs impact how we go about things. Look at Disney and all the things that he's created. If he had been stuck in his limited beliefs, we wouldn't have any of those wonderful movies that we've had. There's been major historical advances in science, in art, in music, because of beliefs. Madame Curie, who helped us know about X-ray and what's gone beyond imaging in medicine. Leonardo da Vinci was even created things that he didn't have the resources to create, but he knew it was possible. Michelangelo, even thinking about music like pop music, rock and roll, hip hop, Cher, even Taylor Swift. You know, if she wouldn't have had some positive beliefs, we wouldn't have thousands and thousands of Swifties. So, did we get any examples of some beliefs out there yet?
We have not. Oh, yes, actually, we had someone just comment, I'm not smart enough or I don't have the skill.
Yeah, there you go. And so, I should be able to just advance these either. There we go. Yeah. So Webster defines beliefs as something that it's accepted or it's considered to be true or held as an opinion. It's something that is believed. And some of the common uh, limiting beliefs are some of the things that you just said. They're the can'ts, the nots, and the I don'ts. The can'ts are like, I can't win, I can't move, I can't change, I can't have what I really want, I can't catch a break, I can't learn. It just goes on and on. The nots, I'm not good enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. Not smart enough. Not creative, lucky, not lovable. Could go on and on. The don'ts, the I don'ts, are typically the reasons and the rationales for why the can'ts and the nots exist. So, like, I don't have enough money. I don't have opportunity. I don't have the right education. I don't have a good job. I don't have the right friends. And this can go on as well. And it can also include limiting AMs. So we also have, so those, the common limiting beliefs we just saw. And then the cans and the AMs are, I can make it happen. I can do my best. I can believe. I can try. I can practice. I can succeed. I can create and I can feel love. So these are some of the ways that we think about positive beliefs. So, what do you do when you want to make a positive change? That's kind of what this webinar is really all about. So, before you can actually change any beliefs, you've got to really be able to identify what are some of the limiting beliefs you have. You need a basic understanding of how beliefs are formed and where they come from. So they come from society and culture. We're influenced by media influencers. politics, religion, stigma, science, family, friends, history. Um, we see them through our experiences, whether the experiences are positive or adverse. One thing to be aware of is that most limiting beliefs actually start in childhood, partly because we have a very limited perspective as children. But our feelings, our perceptions, our assumptions, those all contribute to to some of these beliefs. So remember that some of these things also fit back to that definition that some thoughts are thought to be truths or an opinion. Those also form your beliefs. So once you identify some of these beliefs and know where they come from, then you need to identify and evaluate your major limiting beliefs to determine if you need to delete, modify, or completely upgrade. So just kind of imagine yourself as a biocomputer with thousands of programs, and that computer was first built when you were born. But just as computers have advanced, and the computers that was first built when you were, just as the computers have advanced, the programs that make them operate must also change in some way. And it's the same thing for you. Natural human development actually offers us windows to change and grow our beliefs. Some of the natural ones are through childhood, through adolescence, early adulthood, and major life events. Excuse me. So, but beliefs don't just come right out of the blue. They're formed and they're reinforced for the good or for the detriment. And it's not just beliefs, it's also about values. So ways that they're reinforced are through your relationships, through your repetition of behavior or thought, through your values, how you talk to yourself. And that inner critic that is so natural that we all have one, but can sometimes get in the way. So if you think about your inner critic being part of your limiting beliefs, it's good to wonder, whose voice is that really speaking? Because oftentimes your true self, the self that really wants to come out into the world, is not the inner critic. But what's the tone of that critic, and what activates that inner critic? So then you probably wonder, well, how do you actually change beliefs? Well, first of all, it's good to know what's the difference between beliefs and values. For one thing, beliefs don't need proof. They're assumptions that we make about ourselves and others. Values stem from our beliefs, and they govern the way we behave and interact with people. Beliefs grow from our experiences and what we think, and values are the things that we deem to be important. Beliefs affect our morals, and values affect our behavior and our character. So when you want to change your beliefs, there are a few things that you want to kind of consider. So first of all, I want to think about, what is the purpose of this desired change? If you don't really have a good reason to make a change, it's very unlikely it's going to actually happen. So you have to really think about, what do I want to change? What is important to me about this change? And we can even think about the words we use when we ask these questions. Sometimes if you use the question, why is this important to me? You may find that your inner critic begins a defensive mode for why to hold on to the old stuff. So if you think, what is important to me about this change, it opens up the field just a little bit more. And then think about, what will I gain from this experience, this change? If the gain is not very beneficial, you're not very likely to actually accomplish it. And then how will I know that I've actually changed? That's something that we oftentimes don't look at. But if you think about looking at yourself into the future, looking back, having already accomplished what it is you wish to do, then that gives you an idea of what you're going to gain. Sometimes people think about, well, I know what I don't want. I don't want this and I don't want that. So I'm going to gain not having that. That's helpful. That's very useful in motivation to have something to move away from. But you also need to have something to move towards. And that's what you're talking about when you say, what will I gain from this change? And then how will I know that I've made the change? What's the evidence that shows me I've actually accomplished this? And then what beliefs, behaviors, thoughts stop you from that change? What are the obstacles that get in the way? And then you might also want to consider what are the resources that you might need for that change. And so one of the ways to do this is to use some of our common mental health practices that are really just good life practices. One of them is using questions, questioning things like, is this belief that I already hold, is it true? What's the evidence for that to be true? Because sometimes we'll think something is true, but when we really look at the evidence, we decide, wait, just a minute, not so much. So look for what is the evidence that says it's true for the old belief or even the new belief that you want. And then how does it actually help you? How does the belief help you accomplish what you want to accomplish? And what values are you using to support that particular belief? Just like that previous slide that shows the difference between beliefs and values. They do link together, but they're slightly different. And then you want to think about that, going back to the purpose, what is the goal? So utilizing SMART goals. And SMART goals are really enhanced with effective beliefs, and they need to be positively specific. They need to be growth oriented. They need to be flexible, actionable, and timely. And as you are considering that, one of the other things that goes with the cognitive behavioral model is that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all interconnected. And we know this in a variety of ways. And sometimes you can actually look at a particular situation that might have not had a very good outcome. And you say to yourself, what was I actually thinking in that moment? What was my actual behavior? What was I doing? And how was I feeling? And there's no really particular correct sequence of that. Sometimes people are more aware of what they think, and sometimes people are more aware of what they're actually doing. Sometimes people aren't even aware of the thoughts at all. They're just focused on the feeling. The feeling's not right. So you want to really recognize that there is a relationship between your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. So you want to think about this when you're changing a belief system. You want to say, is my behavior congruent with my evolving belief? Are my thoughts congruent with my evolving belief? And when my behavior and my thoughts change, how do my feelings actually change? So some of the points on this slide are worthwhile to write down. It's very important to know what you want to change and why you want to change it and how it's going to impact or affect you. So the other thing that these points provide is it's a process of increasing awareness. You cannot change what you do not know. So it's really important to be able to increase this awareness. What am I actually doing? What am I saying? What am I thinking? How do I know if it's working for me or not? So your thoughts and your behaviors can become so automatic that you're not always aware of what's actually limiting you. Sometimes people just think, oh, it's this, it's that, it's these environmental barriers that get in my way. But just imagine if Disney thought about environmental barriers when he first started out, they didn't even have color in film. So that could have been, if he would have said, oh, I don't have any way to make this in color, I better not even start, that could get in the way. So consider, how are your automatic thoughts getting in your way? And so increasing awareness. And then you want to be able to interrupt those automatic thoughts and behaviors or feelings, but you cannot interrupt them if you don't know they're even happening. So this notion of really being able to pay attention to yourself so that you can interrupt it, that's the next step, is to actually create that stop sign that says, I'm interrupting this behavior, because it's so very automatic, you may do it and not even know it. So you can't interrupt it if you're not aware that you're doing it. Once you're able to actually interrupt it, then you can redirect your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors to shift from those patterns of same situation, same situation, same situation, to something different. But you're doing it with intention. Sometimes people don't really know what they want to do different. Like I was saying before, they just know what they don't want to do. So same. You want to be able to look at what are you actually thinking, what are you doing, and what are you feeling, so that you can begin to make some change in that, because that's what changes your outcomes. And these are not really new concepts. There's been a lot of people for years and years and years, hundreds and thousands of motivational books and different concepts about how to, kind of think about your belief system and how your belief system impacts your life. So if you find that you're having some beliefs that get in your way, that or you're running into walls. This is often how people kind of start looking at this, is they run into walls and then they decide that they want to make a change. But again, many people look at that from the outside. They think that the outside needs to change, but the change really needs to come from the inside, and that's where your beliefs are. And so when you actually are able to do this, then you really can begin to live a more happy and successful life. It just depends on the beliefs that you decide to keep, delete, or modify. And Gandhi says this pretty well. I'm not sure if you guys are, well, most all of us know about Gandhi. He was a nonviolent leader of his time, and he really wanted to try to make great change, not only in his own community, but in the world. And he was a wonderful philosopher. He had just a lot of great, not only just knowledge, but he also had wisdom. And his wisdom, these are something that he says in a variety of ways, but your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your habits. Your habits then become the values, and then your values become your destiny. And all of this is very much connected to your beliefs. So I want to share a little story with you about a woman who lived in a very tiny house, not a very good one. It was kind of a rundown property. And one day, I mean, she used to always say, oh man, I wish I could get a better house, but no, I can't afford it. I don't have the money, and all kinds of reasons. But one day she woke up and she had had this dream called the what if dream. And she said, well, what if I could do this? What would I need to do? And so she just started thinking about, what if the bank would loan me money? And so she decided to put away her fears for just a moment and actually call the bank and ask, would I qualify for a loan? And they did some analysis and said, yeah, you would qualify for a loan. So she says, oh my gosh, I never thought that was possible. So then she took it one step further and she said, well, gee, if I could qualify for a loan, how am I even going to get this house built? I don't know anything about building houses. And so she just started talking to different contractors and she found one that she could work with. And because of it starting out from a what if moment, she started to open up and expand, and she began to believe that it was possible. At the beginning, she didn't believe it was possible, but she wanted it to be possible. So sometimes it starts with what you want, and then you begin um, to make these shifts in changes. So I'm just curious in our group here, what are some of the things that you've run into where you noticed that your belief system actually got in your way? Or maybe you didn't even know if it was your belief system. You just felt like I couldn't do it.
Nothing in the chat for this question particularly, but someone did comment before. I believe it was from the last slide you had mentioned. It was obstacles like addiction, physical barriers, and disabilities. Evidence of change would be taking small steps and accepting that we have failed in the past, but perfection is not a goal, it's progress.
Yeah, and that's a very true statement because even this previous slide that I was just showing you a moment ago, or whoops, let's see if I get back to that previous slide. Yeah, this is a process right here. It's not like off on switch. It's movement and it's fluidity. And just thinking about the disabilities, I oftentimes think about Special Olympics and how some of the people that perform and compete in Special Olympics, my uncle was a ski instructor for people who had disabilities but wanted to learn to ski. And it was really just quite amazing to watch him help these people change from I can't do it to I can do it. And it wasn't exactly easy for some of these people, but they learn. I knew a man one time who was a person who built prosthetics for people who lost limbs for various reasons. And watching him work with some of those people and seeing how their belief system about I can't do this. If I don't have a foot or a leg or an arm, I can't do it. And they found that yes, they could. So sometimes it actually happens with the actions that we take. You might have heard that uh, statement, fake it until you make it. There is some validity to that in terms of what are the thoughts, what are the behaviors, what are the values that I have to do if I'm going to fake it till I make it. How am I going to actually do this? And if I do it enough, if I practice it enough, will it actually happen? And so some of these experiences that we see with people that are challenged, just through a shift in belief systems, a lot can happen. And but we don't oftentimes give ourselves the opportunity to actually look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, how am I in my own way? Um, and that's always a worthwhile thing to consider.
We had another
So,
one, a couple more comments come through about your question is one of the belief systems is can't lose weight anymore because of my age. And another comment is, I like the miracle question of what if my fear was gone? What would my life be like and what would I be doing?
yeah, so that miracle question was a great way to formulate this for people to say, what if? And this notion of some of these physical obstacles, they are real obstacles, but that doesn't mean that they're insurmountable. So you have to really think about, how are my beliefs supporting, or how are my values and my behaviors and my thoughts supporting these limiting beliefs? And it takes some introspection to do that. It takes some slowing down. It takes some time to think about, how would I do this if I would do it? Um, and oftentimes you go, I have no idea. Well, if we even think about, weight is something that a lot of people are always wanting to change weight. And it doesn't matter how old you are, there's always going to be an obstacle for why you cannot lose weight. Could be a health issue, could be a activity issue, could be lack of resources of some kind. And but as long as your belief system says, no, I can't do it, and you get caught up in those can'ts, don'ts, nots, that's where you're stuck. And so you want to listen to the words that you hear in your head, the words that you tell yourself. And when you hear those key words like, I can't do this, I I don't have that, you might want to be able to switch those words around to some degree and say things like, what do I have? What can I actually do? You know, it might not be that you can go down to the gym and train for 6 hours every day and eat all the proper foods to be a bodybuilder necessarily, but maybe you can walk around the house. Maybe you can walk up and down the stairs several times. Maybe you can notice when you're snacking and say, am I really hungry or am I really thirsty? Because one of the things that we know is that the brain sends chemicals to the body to send us signals to do things. And sometimes those signals get confused. Like, one of the things I always found very interesting is that the same response to stress, or the same chemicals for stress, hunger, and thirst, it's all the same in the brain, and it sends it out into the body. And so if you're not really paying attention to what do I really need or want, you could be confused. You could be stressed and thinking that you're really hungry, when really doing some mindfulness or taking a walk or do something to relax might be a better approach. Sometimes you might think you're hungry when you're really just thirsty and you don't really need all that extra food. But if you're not paying attention to that, then you miss the signal. And this inability to pay attention oftentimes comes from these limiting beliefs. So, so being able to really think about that. And then using affirmations is another way to help you make a change in your belief. Don't really have a slide for that particular one. But that's one of those things about this fake it till you make it sort of a thing, is what are some affirmations that might be useful for you? Affirmations are a lot like SMART goals in a way, is that they do need to be positive. They need to be fluid to some degree, like I am capable. That being capable is not a static thing. Capabilities come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and a lot of ways that we can do things. How often have you ever been confronted with a problem and you try to attack it in one way, it didn't really work, but then you do something different and all of a sudden, voila, it now works. So thinking about, how do you restructure that inner talk? I could just tell you from my experience working with clients and even my own growth, is that our inner talk can sometimes be our worst enemy. So to really pay attention to what are some of the things that you hear yourself say. Anybody have any idea of how many thoughts a person has in a day? Yeah, I could tell you, nobody really knows exactly, but it's well over the hundreds of thousands of possibly even billions of thoughts. Now, are we aware of every single one of these thoughts? We could not possibly be, otherwise we would not get anything done if we were just having to track every single thought. But the thing is in those thoughts become these automatic thoughts that get in our way. They're operating under the level of consciousness. And so when that's happening, you're not able to do a lot of things because you're not even really aware, which goes back to that awareness is key. So sometimes, in addition to doing the questions, using your SMART goals, using your affirmations, you might also want to log, like, what are my blocks? How do I know that I'm not doing what I want to do? I know that sounds like such a silly elementary question, but oftentimes people don't think about that. They don't take the time. They only know the experience of it doesn't work. They don't understand the components of what's not working. And so when you slow down and allow yourself to be aware of what you are thinking when you're in these situations of not working, of something that's not working, and weight is a really good example of that because so many people, they want to lose weight, they want to get healthy. And at the beginning of the year, we always have these great resolutions. I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that. And then, a month into it or so, it's like, no, I didn't really do anything. And so they just fall back into the old beliefs. And so it's really, really, really important to be aware of what are you thinking, what are you doing, and how that influences your feelings. Also, it's worthwhile to do a little assessment of what are my values. Like, how would you write down what your values are? And keeping in mind from the slide before that says, what are values? A second here, let me get back to that. Values govern the way that we interact and behave with others. So if you're trying to do an assessment of your values, how would you do that? One way is you could look and see, how do I get along with people? How do I interact? Do you find that your interactions tend to fall into arguments and fights? Do they tend to be more positive or useful? That's one way to look to see what's the behavior when I'm interacting. How do you decide if something is important to you? Because something that might be important to one person is not going to be important to another, but it is important to you. So if you don't know what that is, it's going to make it very difficult for you to make a change. And so one of the ways to kind of evaluate some of this stuff is look to what is my behavior. It's kind of a focal point of this presentation, really. I'm kind of bouncing through these slides, but just wanted to kind of get to that. So again, just thinking about, what do I really want to change? And then considering, what are some of the beliefs, like, what did your parents ever tell you about making a change like that? Or did they ever? Or, how did you think about it as an adolescent or in childhood? Or have you had any like major experiences in your life that have helped you to make a change or gotten in your way and kept you stuck? It's good to just to look at those experiences and see, what was I doing? What was I thinking? How was I actually interacting? And that will help you to be able to identify what some of these beliefs are. Because again, we tend to focus on what we don't necessarily want, but we don't really focus on the components that make that possible. Just like if you really focus on what you do want, you have to focus on the components that make that possible. And so when you're thinking about those kinds of things, you really want to kind of think about that. Yeah, and the other thing that I've found in my experience with working with people and even with myself, is that we oftentimes don't bring out into the world. I know it sounds like a funny way to say this, but we are made up of so many parts and pieces of us, and oftentimes we keep these really valuable parts of us, this potential, these great belief systems, we keep them locked up and hidden even from ourselves. So we all have this innate ability to be different and to bring the person that we really want to be out into the world. Some of the things that hold us back are the beliefs that I'm scared to do it. I'm not, I don't think it's possible. So by using some of these tools, checking your purpose, what is it that you really want, looking at the questions and trying to define what are the values that hold up this belief? Is this opinion that I have created in some way, is it true? I've heard this, we've got so many influencers nowadays in so many different ways that there's 101,000 ways to look at something. So you have to kind of really narrow it down to what's important for you and from you. I had a person one time was talking about this notion and it came to it about losing weight, but walking up to the refrigerator, getting that signal from the brain that says, I think I'm hungry, but I don't know if I'm stressed or thirsty because I never really thought about it, but I think I'm hungry. So I'm going to go to the refrigerator and open the door. And as she was standing there in front of the door looking at the things in the refrigerator, she started to ask herself, what looks good to me? And then she thought, wait a minute, maybe I should reframe that just a minute and say, what looks good for me? So these words that we use are very important because something that looks good to you may not be good for you. So those are just simple little things that we oftentimes completely overlook. So being able to slow down and think about how these actually emerge in your life. And just know that as you are changing beliefs, you can change them very quickly and very fast. But in the reality, um, they are evolving. And so you want to be able to like help your beliefs evolve in such a way is that lets you really get to live the things that you deserve in life. And oftentimes, one of the limiting beliefs is that I don't deserve it. And the reality of is it that we all deserve the better things in life, and we all deserve love. And so, as I get ready to close here, I just wanted to say a couple things. One is a little bit of a word of caution and encouragement, because sometimes people want to do this so fast and then they run into challenges. So when you make a major change in your beliefs and how you operate, be careful with this concept that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes you say, I'm going to change that belief because it's not serving me. And so you change it. And the problem is if it's giving you some kind of a benefit, it's not really going to get changed. And it might not necessarily work. So you want to be a little bit careful. Do you need to delete the belief? Do you need to modify? Or do you need to really just upgrade it? And so keep that in mind as you're making these moves. Another thing that I wanted to share with you is how many of you have ever read Dear Abby in the newspaper? A lot of people are familiar with Dear Abby. She's written advice to people for years and years and years. But one of the things that just came out recently, and I think she does put this out oftentimes at New Year's resolutions, but she points out that oftentimes New Year's resolutions don't work because we move too fast. We try to take too big of bites and then we choke on it. And so her message is to use the frame just for today. And so some of the beliefs that she's brings out that also even points out how our beliefs can keep us locked in depression or anxiety or move us to possibilities. One of the things that she says is just for today, I will not brood about yesterday or worry about tomorrow. I will be here now. And just for today, I will decide to be happy. Many times people don't think that happiness is a choice. They get caught up in their automatic belief system of unhappiness. So if one tried just for today to be happy, to just do something different, to see what happiness might feel like just for today. And just for today, I will face reality. Sometimes our realities are harsh. Things are tough. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. And just for today, I will improve my mind. I will pay attention to what I'm thinking, to what I'm feeling, to what I'm doing. And anyway, she actually started that just for today. She adapted that that line from a program that came from AA way back when, this notion of take things a little bit slower. And one of the things that we just had a recent presentation on the Lunch and Learns from Kiana Carr on changing resolutions. She made a great point to reframe this word resolutions to intentions to work towards. It doesn't mean that it has to happen like overnight, but that it can be a slow process. It can still be an advancing process. How many of you have ever heard the saying, inch by inch, it's a cinch? I mean, it's in little kids' stories. We've heard it. I don't know. I heard it a lot when I was a kid. But is that a belief system? Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Everything's a cinch. Yes, it's a belief system, but it's held up with values. It's held up with behaviors. It's held up with thoughts. And so, so taking that time to really think about how you think about things, really, really important. And then when you finally, got this figured out, you've decided what you want to change, what's going to be important about it for you, what are some obstacles, what are your thought processes, and you begin to make this change through behavior, through attitude, through thinking. You just have to practice, practice, and practice more. Because changing a belief is about practice. In fact, that's one of the hardest things for people to change is a belief system. So hopefully I've given you a few things today that help you recognize what holds you back, how belief systems can impact your success or your obstacles, and some good things to actually do and use. So anyway, I just want to thank you for taking the time today to learn a little bit more about this. And again, it's not really rocket science. It's kind of these words have been said over and over by lots of different people in lots of different ways, but hopefully you'll be able to look at your own life and say, what are some of these things that get in my way that are actually my belief systems and not the external obstacles that I've always said they were? So I hope you enjoy your journey of exploring beliefs and making some changes.
Thanks so much, Nevada. Awesome, awesome job. Just to do a quick little housekeeping, everybody will get an email shortly after with a little bit of survey in there. This is how we continue to grow the program, add in new topics that you're interested in, all of those kinds of things. So if you have a second, fill out that survey. It's super helpful. You'll also get a link for the YouTube should you want to go back and watch it, review the slides again. It is on the YouTube there at that link as well. Otherwise, we will see you next week. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them here in the chat so we can make sure you get those answered. And then, yeah, we'll move from there. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, and welcome back from some winter break if you have one.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know if you can see the chat, Nevada, but getting lots of thank yous. Thank you for your blessing on the journey. Thanks for the boost.
All right. Well, thank you all too.
We'll just hang out for a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any last minute questions. And then, yeah, go on with the next step of the day. Just got a couple more hanging out, so I just want to make sure that they didn't have anything that they were waiting to have a moment. All right. We do have a couple hanging out, but we'll go ahead and, if you don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up today. If you do have any questions that pop up, you do have my email, that came through the Zoom link, so feel free to reach out. Happy to get those pushed to Nevada to make sure we can get those answered. So awesome, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks, Nevada.
Bye.
Bye.